Hello and good morning. My name is Dylan Harris, and today I will be critically appraising the neuropsychological profile of work addiction by Berta and colleagues. So, what is a critical appraisal? It is a structured way of assessing the reliability and validity of a research study. It's important for this research study because Berta and colleagues aim to profile work addiction or workaholism, which is dysfunctional. It's the inability to disengage from work, and it's been linked with social dysfunction, poor quality of life, perfectionism, low self-esteem. Um, so clearly, the inability to disengage from work makes people feel invaluable, causes them to obsessively seek achievement and avoid failure, to neglect social aspects of life. So understanding workaholism is really important in terms of treatment protocols, and knowing that our understanding is reliable and valid is important, and that's what this presentation seeks to do. So, Boder and colleagues aim to examine the cognitive functionality of people at high and low risk of work addiction. That's a key distinction. They tested the risk of work addiction rather than work addiction. We'll get to that later. Um, they hypothesized that the high risk group would have worse cognitive functionality across the board and also higher levels of compulsiveness and impulsiveness, which in a nutshell is decreased ability to have kind of a buffer between your compulsions, impulsions, and your behavior. So they tested 101 adults from Hungary. They had a sample with an average age of 41 with large variability, and they split them into a high and low risk um, of work addiction group. They did that with the work addiction risk test, which has been psychometrically analyzed and is useful. So, what were the cognitive functions and the tests used? So, the go no go test was used to analyze inhibitory control, which is basically that ability to control your attention and focus. The digit span and counting span were used to test working memory capacity, so the amount that you can hold in your kind of conscious memory. The N-back tasks were used to test simple and complex use of working memory. So the first one back is basically just matching something with another thing, like you're presented with one stimuli and then another, you have to say if it matches or not matches. And then the two back is basically there's a stimuli, another one, and then another one, and you have to link the last one with the first one. So it's a bit more complex. It requires you to update your knowledge on the fly. And then the card sorting task was used to test cognitive flexibility, which is pretty similar to that complex use of working memory. Um, Basically the ability to update your perception and behaviors based on new information. So the high risk group was significantly younger, more impulsive and compulsive than the low risk group. They had poorer inhibitory control and complex working memory. Interestingly, they had better simple working memory, so that one back simple task, and sustained attention. And between the groups, they had equal working memory capacity and cognitive flexibility, which is super interesting considering that the high risk group had poorer complex working memory. But anyway, we'll get to that later. These are the only really like useful graphs from the article where you can see kind of a clear uptick in the high high risk of work addiction group. And those graphs, the one on the left is for compulsiveness, and the one on the right is for impulsiveness. So, what does it all mean? Interpretation. Basically, the key difference seems to be that inability to disengage from a task, but more so the attentional tendency. So, people at high risk of work addiction, once they're locked into a task, it's very difficult for them to engage their inhibitory control. Um, they become super compulsive, impulsive, um, but seemingly, because the cognitive flexibility was equal, it doesn't seem to be a global deficit and just seems to be activated when a task is involved. So the cognitive flexibility of people at high risk um, isn't sacrificed globally, according to this study. There's a big problem with this study right off the rip, and it's in the title. There are no neurological aspects to this study. Um, that does make the title somewhat misleading, and also, these cognitive findings would have been much more convincing and powerful if they were backed up by similar neurological findings. There are also some other limitations. The small sample made it difficult to interpret most of the findings because they were um, small or medium effects. Basically, when a sample is too small, um, small and medium effects, the precision of them is compromised. So we can be reasonably confident that those effects exist, but the exact nature of them, it's it's likely that in this study it was not accurate in terms of their exact figures. And also the small sample leaves this study open to type 2 errors, which is basically concluding that there's no effect when the sample in reality is too small to find a small effect. So that might have happened with the cognitive flexibility um, connection, for example. The study also had poor ecological validity. It was done in lab rather than in a working environment. Both of these limitations contribute to poor generalizability. So you can't be super confident that these results relate to the general population. Obviously, the contradictory findings, the complex working memory and equal cognitive flexibility, that's contradictory within this article, but also other articles have found that work addiction is related to poor cognitive flexibility. So that's a bit of a limitation. Um, and also, these findings are difficult to compare just because of the strange choice to test the risk of work addiction rather than work addiction itself. There were also some strengths, particularly the risk of work addiction. Relating to better, simple use of working memory. Um, there were also some consistent results, so that inhibitory control link has been replicated in other studies, which gives this study convergent validity. Um, the battery of cognitive functions tested was quite extensive, um, which gives quite a detailed profile of the cognitions of high and low risk of work addiction. And all the cognitive tests have really strong psychometric properties. So they've all been rigorously tested in the past. So we can be confident that they're testing exactly what we want them to. In terms of implications, the clinical ones, just because of the amount of limitations, are pretty limited. The novel findings, this article on its own wouldn't be enough for the novel findings to really make an impact on treatment, just because we can't be super confident that they were accurate. But these findings definitely affirm the treatment of inhibitory control through things like mindfulness therapy. In terms of research implications, future researchers should be encouraged to replicate the study with a larger sample or using a longitudinal design. even incorporating neurological facets. Um, yeah, so the research implications are quite good and varied. Just in conclusion, this study makes a decent case for the cognitive profile of people at high risk of work addiction. However, the amount and severity of limitations severely hinder the implications that can be drawn from it. And future researchers should aim to rectify those problems. Thank you very much for listening.